All right, welcome back to the Cover Days, and we're finally going to be taking a look at the expansion to Civilization New Dawn called Terra Incognita. All right, by the way, before I start, I do love that this expansion came in this really flimsy box. You know, more companies should do this. If the expansion fits in the main game box, why make it a pretty box? This is just going to go in the garbage. Awesome. All right, so this is everything you're going to get in the box. All right, quite a bit of stuff. All right, now, there are three major categories of stuff you're going to get in the box. One, fifth player. Second, just more of the same, more stuff. And three, all the extra bits. All right, so for the first thing, fifth player, you know, you got all this purple stuff. I'm not going to talk about this again in this video. If you want to play 5 players, you now have the purple pieces to do so. The only thing that really changes is during the setup. I'm going to talk about that during the new rules setup. I'm going to teach you the only change for fifth player. If not, you'll just play exactly like you would any other player count. All right, so let's not talk about this anymore. All right, the second thing that we have are just more of the same. All right, again, I'm not going to talk about this at all during the video. You know, just shuffle this into your base game box. Just adds a ton more variety. All right, so just, you know, new races. I believe you're doubling them up. New map tiles to throw in. A lot more wonders. You know, add some variety, some extra chits, some natural wonders here, some extra trade goods. These are the city states that come with the new tiles. And finally, my favorite part of this expansion actually are new gold cards, because the base game only had 4. This almost doubles them up, so you have a ton more variety. Your game's going to play a bit different based on which of these cards come out. Awesome addition, but that's all this stuff. All right, so the third category is what this video is sort of going to tackle mostly. It's just the new stuff with the new rules and how it changes the main gameplay. All right, and that's all this stuff up here. All right, so let's get started. All right, so let's tackle all the brand new stuff that's introduced with this expansion. All right, so there's quite a bit to cover. There are essentially 6 different ideas slash modules that you need to take into account. I mean, they don't really cover them as modules, but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to just pick and choose the ones you really like, throw them in, and not play with the expansions you don't like. Okay, so just at a really high level, those 6 things. First, the way the map is created at the beginning of the game is very condensed compared to the base game, because it adds a brand new exploration action that you can do. So it adds one of the 4 X's back into the base game that wasn't there before. Second is we're going to introduce the new civilization focus cards. 3, the way the objective tiles are sort of structured is going to be a bit different. 4, we're introducing the armies. 5, we're introducing the new government tokens. And 6, we're going to be introducing as well the new district tokens. All right, so we're going to go through all of those one at a time. All right, so the first module we're going to tackle is how the initial game map is built at the start of the game. All right, so unlike the core game where you build out all 7 to 12 map tiles and there's no surprises and you just, you know where everything is, and your capitals could be pretty far away from each other, this one introduces a new concept called exploration. Plus, we're all closer to the middle of the map, so you get to interact with each other fairly easier than the core game. All right, which is a really good thing. All right, so the easiest way for me to show you this module, how it works, how to set it up, is to give you an example. All right, so let's just simulate here a 4-player game. So you're going to start off the game by handing each player a map tile with the star. That's where your capitals go, obviously just like in the base game. And for this one, the expansion, you're also going to give them a fort token. Now, this is technically a module. You can play with it or without it, but if you are going to be playing with those new objective cards, you do need to play with the fort tokens, FYI. All right, so you're going to hand one of these combos off to every player. After that, you're going to go into the other tiles and grab 4 of them. Just like in the core game, you're going to play with either the A side or the B side, roll off 1 to 3 one side, 4 to 6 on the other side. Also, what I like to do is make sure you have 2 tiles of city states and 2 tiles of natural wonders. Just helps even things out instead of having all of one or all of the other. All right, give it a good shuffle and then create your core in the middle of the map. All right, so just like you would do in the base game, and you would end up with something like this. And then you would add a trade token just as a reminder that these are your core 4 map tiles. All right, now you're going to go in turn order, starting with the first player. You're going to put out your fort tokens first. Now, the rules of placement of these are pretty simple. It must touch 2 hexes out onto the game board. You can't be next to another fort, and you can't be next to a city state. So any of these spots here are illegal. Just putting it out in the middle of nowhere like this is illegal, but pretty much everywhere else is a legal placement. So you can put it here, 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 whatever you like. So, you know, simulating a 4-player game, let's just say one guy goes over here, one goes over here, one goes here, and one goes, let's say here, whichever. Also, another reminder, if you are playing 2 or 3 players, you're only playing with 2 center tiles. If you're playing 4 or 5 players, then you're playing with all 4 center tiles. Forgot to mention. All right, after everyone's put out their fort tokens in turn order, you're all going to put out your capital map tile in turn order as well. Now, when you're placing this one, you can put on it whichever side you want. And just like base game rules, you're going to place it touching at least 4 hexes, including the fort, from the middle of the board. All right, so just to show you an example. All right, so let's say we would have ended up with something like this. We're almost ready to go. You're going to do just like in the base game. You're going to remove the trade token reminders. You're going to fill up the board with all the tokens that are needed. So the natural wonders, the city states, go get the city state cards, fill up any holes with the lakes that future tiles cannot sit in, the barbarians, the resource chits, and all that stuff. And you get that all prepped, and then you're ready to start the game. So again, you're not building up the outside of the map board. So you are going to have some surprises by having some exploration during the game. All right, that's going to segue us into the next section on how do we explore. All right, so this is fairly simple. All right, so during the game, whenever you're doing a movement action, so with your caravan or with the armies, if you're playing with the armies, and you're on the outside of the board, you can spend 1 movement point to do an explore. All right, so I'll show you with an example. Let's say purple was here and they had 3 movement points. They can do spend 1 movement point to explore. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into this large stack of remaining tiles. You're going to grab the one from the bottom. You're going to look at both sides. You're going to decide which one you want to place. You know, I'm just going to place these randomly, and you're going to connect it to the current hex tile that you're on. Same rules as the capitals. You have to touch at least 4 hexes on the main game board, and one of them does have to be the spot where you're exploring from. So let's just say I can do something like this, but I wouldn't be able to do something like this, for example. All right, let's just show you easy example. Let's say I was like this, and then your turn's not over. You can just keep going. All right, so that was 1 movement point, 2 movement point to explore, and then let's just say 3 movement points to get over here. All right, the only rule is you cannot explore more than once per turn. So let's say I was in the corner over here and I had 2 movement points. Well, I can do 1 movement point to explore here, but I wouldn't be able to spend another one to explore down here, for example, and put out some more tiles here. All right, so that's setting up the new game map and the new explore action you can do throughout the game to get some new map tiles. All right, so the second module are the civilization specific focus cards. All right, so just like you would expect, after selecting your civilization at the start of the game, you're going to go through this deck and take out the one for your factions. For example, this is the one for Zulus. You're going to take this card, add it to your stack of other focus cards. Now, if it is a number 1, for example, like this one over here, you're going to exchange that one in your focus row right away at the start of the game. So this is the growth card. I would replace it with this growth card. All right, but if it's a 2, 3, or 4, any other one like this one, just as you would expect, when you're gaining signs and you unlock a specific card, well, instead of getting the one from the base game deck, you can put in the civilization specific card instead and replace it with that type. So this one would be the culture card, which would be over here, instead of the base culture card from the base game deck. All right, so pretty easy to implement, and there you go. All right, so the third module is just a slight variation on how the objective cards are laid out. So remember, in the base game, you lay out 3 objective cards. First person to achieve all 3 is going to win the game. All right, now for the expansion, you're still going to lay out 3 objective cards, but you're going to introduce the 2 new fort objective cards. All right, and your goal is to complete 4 out of the 5 that are available on the table. All right, now the beauty of this is that the fort ones, you can actually lose those objectives because they are spaces on the board. So if I gain control of a fort, then I'm going to gain this objective. But then if I lose that spot, well, then I'm going to lose this objective. Whereas all the regular objectives, as soon as you get it, well, you can't really lose it, right? All right, and that's just a slight variation there. All right, so the fourth module is the introduction of the governments. All right, so what kind of civ game would this be if you couldn't change the government of your civilization? All right, so pretty simple. During setup, you're going to hand each player one of each of the 6 different government tiles. All right. And I did forget to mention this at the intro section, but we are given a brand new event dial that the first player is going to hold on to signify that he's first player. And the little white house symbol here is the government event. All right, so whenever the arrow points over here, you're going to do one of 3 things. You're going to either enact a government if you haven't enacted one already, which is at the start of the game. You're going to change your government. So remove the current government tile that you have on your display board and replace it with a new one, or you're going to keep the one that you currently have. All right, so I'm going to show you with some examples. Let's say we hit our first government event. I don't have a government yet. What you're going to do is you're going to look at the first 2 focus cards. All right, just as a little reminder, you do see that government symbol on top of the number 1 slots. All right, and you're going to look at the 2 government types tied to those cards. All right, so in this example here, it would be the science card, which would be democracy, and over here it would be the growth card, so it would be monarchy. All right. These tokens would stay in your supply area. All right, now you can enact one of these 2 governments by placing the tile on top of that focus card. So let's say I want to enact astrology. I will put that token on top of my astrology card. All right, and that's how you enact a government. Now my government is a democracy. Later on in the game, let's just say this card was over here and this card was over here. Again, when that event hits, you can either change your government or keep the one that you currently have. So I can keep democracy, or I can return democracy by enacting either, let's see, this is industry, so it would be communism, or again, it would be monarchy. So pick one of the 2. Let's say I want to switch to monarchy and put that on there. All right, so that's how you gain a government. Now, what do governments give you? Well, you're going to have to look at the arrows of the government. All this means is when you use this focus card, all right, instead of using it on the current focus card slot, so the number or the terrain type, it simulates as if the card was ahead as many spots as there are arrows on that government. The reason I have to say it that way is because some of them have only 1 arrow and some of them have 2. So in this case over here, when I would enact my irrigation card, it would be simulated as if I'm using the irrigation card on slot number 5, because this has 2 arrows, 1, 2. Pretty simple. If this one was over here, and I would use this card, well, it would simulate like it was on the 4th card slot over there. Just as per usual, after you use the card, it always gets returned back to the far left, and you never lose your current government until the next government event. All right, so the 5th module is the introduction of a brand new unit type called the armies. All right, so one of the biggest complaints about the base game was that the attacking military was a bit too abstract. You're just calculating distances between control markers, that type of thing. But now you're going to forget all those rules, and all the attacking is done through your armies. All right, so for this to set up, all you're going to need are the brand new military cards that have the flags on them. All right, the flags also indicate how many armies you can have out on the board. So at the start of the game, you can have 1 army on the masonry card, but as you go, you can sort of unlock the other cards that have more flags. And when you do that, you can add the 2nd army to the card. Okay? And your army is going to move around the board exactly like a caravan would, but when it hits or ends its movement on an opponent's piece or a barbarian or a city-state, well, it's going to stop, and then you're going to do an attack. All right, so in this random example, let's say I would activate this card. It says move 3 spaces, start from my city, 1, 2, 3. I end my movement there. Even if the caravan was here, I go 1, 2. I would have to stop because I encountered a piece, and then I would perform an attack. All right, when doing an attack, you'd follow exactly like you would in the base game rules. You know, you're attacking either a caravan, a city-state, a capital, a city, a control marker. The result of the attack is going to be exactly the same as in the base game. It is very complex, the attacking. You have to calculate the defense. You have to roll, add your strength of the card slot. You know, there's a very helpful summary on the back of the rule book, what you need to use as modifiers. I do have to mention as well that you do add a +2 if there's an army on the spot where you're attacking. Okay, so that's basically what you're doing on the attack. Just as a summary, if the attacker ever loses an attack against anything, it's going to return back to the control card that it came from. Okay, when you win the attack, you're going to gain the exact same benefits from the base game. All right, most of the time it's returning a unit back to the opponent or changing a marker into yours instead of the opponent. All right, on the subject of attacking, I think it's a good time to talk about forts and what are forts. Remember, these were placed out on the map board at the beginning during the setup by each player. And you can almost think of these like barbarian strongholds that really don't do much. They're just on the game board, but you do need to go attack them. All right, so let's put this back. All right, so just like attacking a city or any other unit on the board, you're going to move your army piece onto that space to attack it. All right, so let's say I want to attack it. Now, it's uncontrolled, so its base defense is going to be 6. And if I beat it, the reward of beating it is I get to put a city on top. And that's how you control forts, all right? And that's how you achieve one of the 2 new type of objective cards. So there's one for controlling 1 fort, and there's one for controlling your 2nd fort. All right, but those objectives you can lose, unlike the base objectives, the other colored ones, because somebody else can come along, attack my city, and if they win, well then now they're going to put their city and replace it with their token type of thing. All right, and the 6th and final module are the districts, and these are the tiny little tokens you're going to be handing out at the start of the game. All right, each player is going to have their own set, and this module is pretty much the only reason why we're using the 6th card slot row, because the new card here, Irrigation, is the growth card, and this is the card that lets you put out the districts. This is place a district, so on and so on and so on. All right, but for all intents and purposes, the rules tied to these, when they're on the board, pretty much just treat them exactly like control markers. All right, there's nothing special about them. The only difference is whenever we're going to hit an event here with the yellow spaces, which are the district events, they're going to give you a special power. But while they're on the board, they're just control markers. All right, so for example, let's say I was activating my irrigation card right now. All right, it says build a district on one of these terrains or lower. Let's say I will go through the ones that I have available. You're always going to place them unreinforced side up and place them wherever you can according to the card. All right, and there you go. Just like a control marker. Now, in the future, I could reinforce it. And also a special rule is when placing, you can actually replace a control marker that you have on the board with the district token following the same rules. Okay. The only special rule when it comes to districts, the only really thing you have to take account of is when an opponent attacks a district and wins the battle, instead of replacing it with one of their districts, they're just going to replace it with a control marker instead. All right, so you don't exchange districts for districts. It's a district, gets destroyed, goes back to your supply, gets replaced with a control marker. All right, but let's come back to the events. What's going to happen when you hit one of these events? Well, I'm not going to explain to you what all the different districts do. What you're going to do is you're going to go on page 9 of the rulebook, and there's all 5 different icons over here, and they all give you a special ability. If you have them on the board, you can activate them in any order that you like. If you have multiple on the board, you can activate them in turn order if you really wanted, but they're all tied to their icons. This one gives you trade goods on your science and so on and so on. So there you have it. All right, so those were all the new things. This small section here, FYI, I just forgot to mention at the start, there are some cards we need to replace from the base game box. There's some objectives. You know what? I'm not going to go through all of them. They're all pretty clear laid out inside the rule book. Some wonders, some diplomacy cards, some of the focus cards, so on and so on. The only major difference is because we're adding so many wonders into the wonder deck, you do have to manipulate the deck a little bit, and I'll explain that right now. Now we're gonna have a lot more wonders because the expansion is throwing quite a bit more. You can't have the decks way too big, or else you'll never get down to those modern wonders at the bottom of the stack. So what you're gonna need to do is you're gonna set up the wonder deck exactly like you would from the base game. You have your medieval cards on top of your your ancient cards on top of your medieval cards on top of your modern cards. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna go through each color and remove one of each type. So through the yellow deck, I'll remove one ancient card, one medieval card, and one modern card. All right, I've already done that for the other 4 decks. All right, and that's how you're gonna set up the World Wonder decks. All right, the last thing to mention about World Wonders is we are given this brand new event dial that the first player is gonna move throughout the game. And whenever the dial hits this icon, this is the World Wonder icon. All right, we're gonna sort of lower the cost of the ones that are currently on the display. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna throw on a trade good on each of these. And if somebody wants to buy that World Wonder, its cost is reduced by 1. All right, this also means though, when we're gonna hit that event again, let's just say it was like this. Any card that currently has a trade chit that's going to get a second one is going to get removed from the game. So we're going to remove both of these chits back into the box, and we're also going to remove this wonder from the game. And that's a way of refreshing these wonders so that it doesn't stay stale if there's a wonder that nobody really wants to buy.